Alright, everybody. When last we spoke on a Saturday, we were talking about various reasons that we got President Trump in the 2016 election in lieu of a more seasoned politician that everybody expected was going to come out of that election. There was a lot of talk around Hillary, there was a lot of talk around Bernie, and there was a lot of talk around Jeb. But, as everybody knows right now, we have a political freshman sitting in the White House who is getting obstructed at every single turn that he can find to get obstructed on. And I have posited on numerous occasions that is because he is a freshman politician and the people in the media and the people in the government don't quite know what to do with him. They just know that they can't control him, and more people are going to be stepping up to follow in his footsteps and put them out of office. But we've been doing this Saturday series on why he got elected in the first place. I do want to first thank everybody for being patient with me while I moved and got into my new studio and got it all set up. Thanks for sticking with me through these few weeks. I know I lost a subscriber and a couple of Twitter followers, but for the most part everybody's been faithful and very patient with me, and I'm very appreciative of that. But when I last left on a Saturday, we were talking about Barack Obama's economy. And there was so much more that I wanted to say about Barack Obama, but I was just running out of time. My video was already almost a half an hour, and I hadn't even touched on any of the sociological aspects of the Barack Obama presidency, what it did to the country, and why I think it led to us having President Trump as our president. Barack Obama was known as the social media president and the social media presidential candidate, and this was actually a very accurate description of how Barack came into his power and how he was able to spread his message of hope and change throughout the masses of the people all across the country. Obama was one of the first presidents to use Facebook, Twitter, and other forms of social media in order to advertise directly to the youth vote, and that was his focus throughout his entire term of candidacy and presidency, was the youth vote. He wanted to appeal to very young people and try to get them to pick up his ideas that had been tried years and years in the past, but unfortunately had fallen and failed long before most of the youth that he was appealing to had ever been born. Now, I'm not saying that any of this is a bad thing. Donald Trump did a lot of the same things that Barack Obama did when he was campaigning as well. He used Twitter a lot, and Twitter was actually circling the drain by the time Donald Trump came in, and I think Trump revived it a little bit. And Obama definitely changed the way that people are going to market and campaign for years to come. It's so much easier to campaign to the people that you want to campaign to if your message isn't first transmitted through the media giants. That's what Trump did with Twitter, and that's what Obama did with Twitter too. I think that Obama's message was going to be much more extreme than a lot of the media was comfortable with at the time. The media got very comfortable with it throughout his presidency, but at the time it was just way too extreme and way too left-wing for the mainstream masses. And that's a part of the problem that the Obama legacy left behind, especially when it came to what it did to our society and what we're looking at now with social problems that I never could have imagined years ago when I was first turning 18, when I was the age of some of these millennials and Gen Zers that are going to start voting, that think that these issues are the most important thing in the world. I never could have imagined half of this. Transgender was just a joke that somebody told when they were doing the intro credits in a seedy bar in New York City. Gay marriage was something that got talked about on, but just never seemed to be that big of an issue, especially with the economy crashing. And race riots at the time that I was turning 18 were almost non-existent. I mean, yes, I lived in a small town and I didn't experience a lot of it, so I'm sure there was more going on in bigger cities, but it was just something that you never saw at the time. And part of the reason that I think social media and politics are both so huge in our 2018 culture is that they were used hand in hand for the people in charge to communicate directly with their constituency. We're at a point almost where we're getting a social media burnout. A few people that I watch on other YouTube channels have talked about this already. I haven't had a chance to talk about it, but I'd like to. But I think people are starting to burn out on social media itself, yet they are still going forward full force with politics. With Obama, there was more to the story than just the political influence that he was able to dispense directly to his constituency via social media. I'm going to come right out and say that I don't think a lot of what I'm about to talk about is directly Obama's fault. I think a lot of it is indirectly his fault, but I don't think a lot of it is directly his fault. I think a part of this comes from the fact that for the majority of our lives, most of the information that we received was transmitted through a media giant who scrubbed the message clean and made sure that it was disseminated in a way that didn't destroy the country. While I am a free speech absolutist, and I think it's deplorable that all of the information that we received when we were younger was spoon-fed to us by Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, and even PBS, I don't think that the millennials that suddenly got social media and got a voice, in addition to the younger Gen Xers that came before us, were completely ready for the social media storm. And I think that's a big part of the reason that Obama's message got carried as far as it did and our country got left in the state that it was. One of the first things that I brought up when I started talking about this topic earlier was the fact that when I was turning 18 and coming into voting age, race riots were almost a thing of the past. We had the Rodney King riots in LA in 1992, but that was one of the last real big race riots that was out there that was made into national news. Anything else was very quiet and swept under the rug by the news companies in the bigger cities. It goes back to the point that the media could sanitize the story before it got out to the masses. However, in 2014, 2015, and 2016, we had news report on news report about race riots ranging anywhere from a police officer using a justified killing to a police officer who didn't use a justified killing to just a general political rally. And a lot of this got a lot more media attention than it probably would have in the 90s when I was growing up. There are the tinfoil hatters out there that say that every cop that shot a black kid or every black kid who pretended to get shot by a cop was nothing more than a crisis actor who was trying to go out and incite the riot. I don't fall that far into the tinfoil. And with that being said, I don't believe that Barack Obama was directly responsible for any of this happening. But the social media aspect of it and Barack Obama urging people to use their social media platforms in order to talk down conservatives and spread his message, I think was in part of the reason that the racial tensions got so big. In 2014, we no longer had to sit and wait for CNN to tell us how to feel about a race riot. We could listen to our friends. In fact, the information didn't have to get to CNN first to get all around the country. Somebody took a cell phone video somewhere and uploaded it to the cloud, and all of a sudden everybody else in the world could see it almost instantaneously, completely bypassing the media outlets. And in addition, if anybody opposed the popular viewpoint of how an event went down, it was so much easier for the masses to come together on social media and down-talk the person who had a dissenting view, sometimes forcing him off social media, sometimes using the social media to cost a person his job. Eric Holder has talked about a lot when it comes to things that would have normally been taken care of on a local setting being exploded onto the national stage when they didn't need to be exploded onto. The Michael Brown case is a big case of that. By anything that's been brought forward to me by both social and regular media, the Michael Brown case was completely justified police shooting and probably would have ended with a little bit of police payback to the family and a local news story at the time. It might have hit the Chicago news, but I don't think it would have been plastered all over CNN at the time. However, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media were able to push this into a national spotlight and turn something that was completely justified into a case of either you agree with the police or you agree with the deceased. And it was very polarized on that direction as well. You couldn't be anywhere in the middle. In every case of a police on black violence situation around the country, Barack was always quick to say that this could have been him or this could have been his son.
When Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying that is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago.
Whenever he did that, he left a general distrust among most of the millennials with the police of the country. And that got to be a very dangerous thing. In 2008, when Barack Obama was coming into office, I was very proud of the fact that the fuck the police narrative that was coming out of many rap groups at the time was starting to die down. Rap itself was starting to die down. So the distrust of police was starting to go away. And in just a couple of years, that complete distrust and that complete hatred came back to a point that it became memes on both sides of the argument. To this day, I continue to see stickers in the back of trucks and cars that say, "I support the Blue Lives Matter," and in general, just American flags with one single blue line throughout a black and white color scheme on them. The police on black violence narrative is just one example of how President Obama's use of social media and his urging of his followers to use social media fundamentally changed the fabric of our society. Gay rights, transgenderism, and unfortunately now pedophilia are all three things that are also coming out of this social media wave and this acceptance wave that Barack Obama tried to push on middle America. And the complete abortion narrative has 100% changed fundamentally from when I was in my early 20s to now being in my early 30s. A lot of this goes back to what I said in my last Saturday video about Barack Obama preaching to the coastal elites rather than the entirety of the country and the middle America being completely alienated. With the exception of a few pockets in either bigger cities or very progressive strongholds like the one that I work in, transgenderism is almost a complete non-starter. Most of the people prior to Obama being president had never seen, knowingly, a transgender person in their lives. And yet our news cycle dominates all about these people that most people will truly never encounter anywhere, anytime. As far as gay marriage and transgenderism are concerned, I'm actually a lot more progressive than most of my conservative counterparts in the alternative and the mainstream media. As long as the funding for the legislation doesn't come off the backs of a hardworking American person who would otherwise be unaffected by it, I will sign a petition for legislation to make the lives of these people easier. One of the great things about this country is that it promises you the absolute right to your pursuit of happiness. If that's what's going to make you happy, I'm more than happy to help. As long as you're not asking somebody else to pay for it, because I am a very fiscally conservative person. But unfortunately, these issues were thrust right out into the middle of our mainstream. Every TV outlet had this issue sitting right out in front, and this is not something that's going to affect the majority of people in Wyoming or Montana or Wisconsin for that matter. And then, of course, in middle America, we were all forced to look down a legislation that took the regulation of marriage and record keeping away from the states and put it back into the hands of the federal government. A fundamental freedom that we all held dear, that anything that wasn't covered under the Articles of the Constitution or the first 10 amendments of the same document should be left to the state, had been fundamentally taken away from us. The last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the fundamental change in the attitude towards abortion, especially among millennials. This is something that's still going on today, especially through the Trump presidency. And in all honesty, the narrative is just getting worse and worse every day we go along. Abortion has been an argument for as long as I've been alive, and considerably longer at that point, with Roe v. Wade being founded in 1972. We talked about this when we talked about Judge Kavanaugh. When we were younger, the argument for abortion was that it was supposed to be safe and rare. Yes, everybody had a right to it, but you still had that social stigma that kept you from getting it. Having an abortion was kind of like the scarlet letter. You didn't talk about it in public, and you kind of kept it to yourself, or you kept it between you and your partner at the time if it was something that came out of a monogamous relationship. The protesters on the right that were against abortion were always out there. They were always saying the same thing. But for the most part, it was still something that was a fundamental right according to the legislation, but it was regulated by shame. And all of that changed during the Obama years. What once was an act that you kept to yourself and you never talked about again started coming out into the mainstream, with Hollywood celebrities left and right coming out and saying that you should be shouting your abortion, that you should be proud of it, that you have control over life if you've ever had one, and you're not a real woman unless you have. This fundamental attitude shift in abortion came from people coming out in droves, like-minded people who have had an abortion, talking about it on social media and otherwise. Just coming out and coming together and trying to change the attitude about it. Most of them were Obama supporters. There are full-on half-an-hour specials on Netflix and mainstream TV now that are talking about how proud you should be that you had an abortion.
Abortion, I salute you! Women, if you need an abortion, get one! If you want an abortion, get one! If you're not pregnant but you think you eventually might be and want to order a future abortion, get one! If you're pregnant and you want to be pregnant, don't get one! It's up to you, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's actually a great deal. It's about $300. That's like 6 movie tickets. Movie tickets, a bad deal. And women, don't forget, you have the power to give life, and men will try to control that. Don't let them! God bless abortions, and God bless America!
This fundamental attitude shift in the situation is just something that could have never come out without an Obama presidency. Or maybe it would have, but I don't believe he has his hands completely clean in inciting it either. Now, this is one of those topics that when I started the video I said that I couldn't directly attribute to Obama. But this is definitely something that I feel that he was indirectly involved with at the time. When you spend your time on social media talking specifically to your constituents and rallying them behind causes that you get behind specifically and directly, the aftermath of that is that the people that you have on social media are going to come back together and rally behind causes that you may not directly be involved with, but is something that they are involved with as well. When you use social media as a political club to fundamentally change the fabric of society for things that will benefit you personally, you can't be surprised, and you have to take some responsibility when other things that you don't directly and specifically agree with are also changed in fabric with the people that you've drawn in. And I think that's a lot of where this whole shout your abortion argument came from. Now, I don't completely consider this last portion to be all bad, because I think this is a big part of the contributing factor of the walkaway movement. I know millennials. On some charts I actually am a millennial. I know the world that we grew up in, and I know the influences that were out there, and the way that we were taught to feel about certain issues. And I think a lot of these narratives that came out of the Obama administration are starting to come to a culmination point where they've gone too far. I talked a little bit about the gay marriage rights and the transgender rights issues, but the end of that is turning into pedophilia. The legal abortion rights that regularly come out of the Democrat Party are turning into shout your abortion and be proud of it.
Get one!
I mean, hell, the division between blacks and whites that came out of the Obama administration is starting to mend right on its own as black unemployment drops to its lowest point in U.S. history, and more of the black community is being integrated into our regular society, and we're starting to see that each of the other side isn't really that bad, and we all really do want the same things. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Donald Trump has done in his personal life. and I don't necessarily agree with the way that he uses his social media and his Twitter and many other forms of communication directly to the people. But with all that being said, I agree with what Barack Obama did with his Twitter and his social media even less. Fundamentally, I think the majority of this country saw the way that our country was going by the end of the Obama years. And I think that was a driving force, in addition to the economic issues, for why everyone got out and voted for Trump in the 2016 election. I think a lot of people out there, especially in middle America, recognized that getting Hillary into office, and even possibly Bernie Sanders, would have been nothing more than 4 years, or 8 years, eerily enough, of the same things that divided us, the same political and social issues that were forced onto people that otherwise would have never encountered them. And once again, I think this is where this walkaway movement is coming from. The Liberal Party is known for being more fiscally authoritarian and more socially liberal, but they've gotten to the point that they are so far to the left that they're becoming more socially authoritarian again, but in a different way. It's not just live your life to do whatever makes you happy, it's you have to accept this way of life, or you're a bigot and you're bad and we're going to get you fired from your job and shunned from society. That's a big part of where the walkaway movement came from. That's a big thing that Barack Obama incited throughout his presidency, and that's a big part of the reason that we got Donald Trump. What social issues came to the forefront during the end of the Obama years? To you, what did you see of our society, and how do you want it to change back to the way it was? I always welcome a thoughtful and positive discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks as always for listening to this show and supporting this channel. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care, everyone.
You're